saw he's got some classic cars, and he's got old Lincoln Continental, like powder blue Lincoln Continental, and I noticed he had brought it home and has a Mecum plate on it. So I was going to look it up. I assume he showed it and it didn't sell. Yep. Good evening, everyone. I now call to order the Thursday, April 23rd, 2026 meeting of the City of Sugar Land Planning and Zoning Commission. Good evening, folks. Good evening, commissioners. Let's get right down to business, starting with item 3, public comment. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
No, Chair, we do not.
Okay. Item 4A, consideration of and action on the approval of the minutes of the March 26, 2026 meeting. You've got those in your packets. Any comments?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
Got a second from Commissioner Smith. Please vote. And that passes 7-0. Thank you. Item 5A, subdivision plat, Del Webb Sugarland at Rye Hill Section 1C, final plat. We will have consideration of action on said plat this evening, and we have Ethan Cantu, Principal Planner. Hello, Ethan.
Good evening. So so tonight we've got Del Webb Sugarland at Rye Hill, Section 1C. So I'm going to go ahead and get into that. I know we just went over this a couple weeks ago, but I'm just going to do a brief overview of the development. So as you guys know, the City of Sugarland entered into a development agreement with Pulte back on December 5th of 2023 for a proposed 958-acre master plan mixed-use community in the city's ETJ. This is going to be a mix of approximately 2,300 single-family residential and Del Webb lots. The difference between those two, obviously, is the 55 and over. So the single-family is going to be 40, 45, 50, and 60-foot wide lots, and the Del Webb is going to be 40, 50, and 65-foot wide lots. There's also 60 acres of the flex commercial uses north of FM 2759. And so for this map here, what's outlined here in green is going to be what's under consideration tonight. 1D is now red because that was approved in the last meeting. And then to go over a quick overview of the Section 1C, this can be a portion of the Del Webb Sugarland at Rye Hill Section 1 preliminary plat, which was approved last April without conditions. And once again, this is located in the city's ETJ, south of 2759 and east of 762. And access for this section is going to be provided via Webb Parkway, and the main intersection roadway through this is going to be Merrick Fairway. So apologies on leaving that off the slides. So for 1C, it's going to be 23.408 acres of Del Webb residential. It's going to have 70 lots, 9 reserves, and 5 blocks. And there is a 3-acre reserve restricted to the drill site in this section, and I'll touch a little bit more on that here shortly. So looking at the general plan again, that darker yellow is going to be the Del Webb section. The lighter yellow is going to be the single-family residential, and then the flex track to the north. You've also got the amenity centers in purple, the drill sites in gray, and then detention and green space as well. So here's a section of that preliminary plat for Section 1. Outlined in red is going to be what's under consideration tonight. And here is that proposed final plat. It is split into 2 separate sheets. The sheet on the left, if you look on that bottom left portion, is going to be where the drill site is, and access to that is provided off of Blush Cove going through the development. And then there's also a drill site access easement south of that going through Section 2. And just a quick reminder, so you do have 3 options tonight. You can approve with conditions, or disapprove. Those final 2 options, you do have to cite the code. And there was the planning guide provided in your packets to help with any code references. Yeah, and with that, so staff recommends approval of the proposed Del Webb Sugarland at Rye Hill Section 1C final plat, and we'll be here for any questions you guys have. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ethan. Questions for staff? Show me your hand if you have a question. All right, Mary, go.
I just want to confirm, because I believe it was in the information, but there weren't any conditions when we approved the preliminary plat, correct?
Correct, yeah, there was no
Okay.
conditions on that.
I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Anything else? Vice Chairman Hart, the floor is yours. Hit your microphone.
Thank you. On the sheet 3 of 4, I guess there's along section 4, there's a 10-foot storm sewer and water line easement, a 10-foot water line easement, and a 15-foot storm sewer and water line easement, and they're all, I guess, is there a reason that they're different with the water line easement and the storm sewer easement in the same location along the same side? Look at like lot 9 and lot 15, lot 16. That's where the call-outs are.
Yeah, so I'm Robert Wilson, assistant city engineer. The easement on lot 16 through lot 9 extends across all the way to, well, so the 10-foot storm and water line easement appears to be up to lot 16, so that's following that storm sewer infrastructure, and then it's a 10-foot water line as the water line extends past that, and then it picks back up as a 15 storm due to the depth of the storm on lot 9 when there's more storm pipe there. So there's no storm line installed between lots 10 and 15, which is why that drops off.
Okay. And since you're up there, on Wheeless Lane, lot 18 and lot 9, the building line is 20 foot on lot 9 and 10 feet on lot 18. And those are both side lot building lines fronting the same street. I was just wondering, why is that? Because lot 10 also has a 20-foot building line.
Sorry, what was the other lot? 10 and which one?
18 has the 10, 9 has the 20, 10 has the 20. It's on the south side of Wheeless.
So lot 18, that's a side build line, whereas the other lots that you're describing, are you talking about the lots that are fronting Blackhorn Trail? 18 on block 4 is fronting Blackthorn Trail.
And so is 9.
And so is not. So you're looking at the other one that's fronting across on block
Yeah.
5.
On block 4 and block 5. Block 4 has a 10-foot. It might be 20 foot. It might just be called out wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, so what is you're wondering why it's 10 foot on 1 and 20?
Yeah, why is it 10 foot on
No,
1
that's
and
a good
20?
call. I think it needs to be 20 instead of 10. No, that's a good call.
Just for the record, Ethan, you're speaking. Be sure you have the mic, okay? Thank you.
Yes. No, I think that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
It looks like it was 20, but I just wanted to. And then on the second, on sheet 4.4, there's a 16-foot building line, and I'm wondering if that was the same thing. Is that supposed to be 15 foot? It's just south of lot 13.
Yeah, I think because we had discussed this with them previously, I think that was just the way that the way that the labeling worked out was it was difficult to label all of those in the same place. But if you need us to label those in a different way to make that more clear, we can do that as well. We can clean up the labeling on that section.
Oh, because it's supposed to be 15 foot, but it's a
Yeah.
combined building line and
yeah,
storm sewer easement?
correct,
And so
yeah,
that's
and
why it's 16, there's 1 foot, okay.
Yeah, and it's in a reserve, so
It's just south of lot 13 in block 1, along Merritt Fairway. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, then I will make a motion that we approve the Del Webb Sugarland at Rye Hill Section 1C final plat, subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the 15-foot building line be correctly shown on the plat south of Lot 13 in Block 1. And the basis for that, I guess I could go in a couple different directions, but let's go with lots and reserves, specific dimensions, callouts, et cetera, development application handbook, section 4, graphic requirements, requirements for final plat development code, chapter 5, article 2, section 5-17, development code, chapter 2, article 2 for city limits, and development code, chapter 5, article 2, section 5-21 for ETJ. Somewhere in there we've got the right justification. The second condition that I'm going to request on there is that the signature blocks be updated to include the names of current public officials who may be signing that, and that would be pursuant to the Development Application Handbook, Section 4, Graphic Requirements for Final Plat, and Development Code, Chapter 5, Article 2, Section 5-17. Is there a second?
I second.
Got a second from Commissioner Brown. Any further discussion? Please vote. And that passes 7-0. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
everyone. Good questions, and moving right along. We are now going to move on to item 6. Item 6 is ultimately going to be consideration of an action on a recommendation for a proposed amendment to plan development, PD ordinance number 2098, Holy Cross Episcopal Church Final Development Plan, located at the northeast corner of West River Park Drive and Wimberley Canyon Drive. The 23.545 acre plan includes 3 sites: existing site A, Holy Cross Episcopal Church; existing site B, Village at Sugarland Assisted Senior Living Facility; and proposed site C, being used for age-restricted senior living 55+ constructive 1-story bungalows and a 4-story courtyard-style residences. Emily, let's go ahead and hear your presentation, and then we will move on to the public hearing. Further questions and consideration of action.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. I believe Jessica Rodriguez had mentioned she wanted to do a little tidbit before, so I'm just going to...
Apologies, I remembered and I forgot. Emily has been with us probably going on almost 3 years, and she was a planner 1. She was recently promoted to a planner 2, so I'd like to just bring her back before the commission as our planner 2 with this final development plan. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you for that, and congratulations on your promotion.
Oh, shucks. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. I'm not very good at accepting compliments, so thank you. With that being said, getting into a little bit about me, we'll go ahead and get into the item before us today. Okay, perfect. So essentially we were gathered, I always open this way, we were gathered here today for a public hearing for a proposed amendment to Plan Development Ordinance 2098, or the Holy Cross Episcopal Church Final Development Plan. The FDP is located at the northeast corner of River Park Drive and Wimberley Canyon Drive, and the reason for the amendment is to incorporate an additional 5.785 acres into the FDP to allow for the construction of independent 55+ senior living. And a little bit of an overview on the current FDP. So the current FDP on the property currently consists of 17.76 acres of land and has 2 reserves or sites, with site A being the existing Holy Cross Episcopal Church and with site C being the existing Village at Sugarland Senior Living Facility. And then the following graphic is going to show the current site conditions for the property. Find my mouse. Okay, perfect. And then, so this site right here is going to be the existing site A, which is going to be the Holy Cross Episcopal Church. And then over on this side is going to be the existing site B, which is the Village at Sugarland Assisted Living Facility.
No, go ahead, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no, I just wanted to...
Getting attorney consultation on an issue.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to make
Sorry.
sure. No, you're okay, I just want to make sure that, just want to make sure, okay. And then moving on, this is going to be the current condition. So the dark green right here is going to be the current 17.76 acres, which is in the current FDP ordinance, and then that black hatching is going to show what would be the proposed pounds of the FDP should the amendment be approved. And then a little bit about the proposed amendment. So the proposed amendment would incorporate, like I said, an additional 5.785 acres of land into the FDP, bringing the total acreage for the site to 23.545. The additional 5.785 acres would be called Site C, and the proposed use for this site would be independent 55-plus senior living. The development would feature two types of dwelling units, one-story bungalows, and then a four-story structure featuring 1- and 2-bedroom dwelling units, with the one-story bungalows being oriented towards the western edge of the property towards the existing residential community, and with the four-story structure being oriented towards the eastern edge of the property, abutting US Highway 99 or the Grand Parkway. And then a little bit more about the proposed FDP. So the FDP will feature a minimum 40-foot landscape buffer abutting the existing residential neighborhood to the west, and this buffer will also feature shade trees for screening and noise mitigation at 30-foot intervals. This would align with the existing residential buffer between Site B and the existing residential neighborhood. The development also provides internal connectivity between the sites for pedestrians, featuring paved pedestrian paths and then crosswalks for ease of movement. Additionally, drive-throughs, outdoor storage, and fleet parking, except for 2 residential transport vans, are prohibited for the development, and outdoor speakers are only permitted within the internal residential courtyards, maintaining the residential feel of the existing community. And then this is going to be the proposed layout for Site C. And then as you can see, there's the mouse. And then these are going to be the one-story bungalows. This is going to be the western edge of the property. This is going to be where the existing River Park residential community is. And then over along here will be US Highway 99. And then this is going to be the 4-story structure, which is again oriented towards the more intense roadway. And then this is going to be the proposed elevation for the 1-story dwelling unit. As you can see by the diagram, the proposed height of the bungalows is actually shorter than the maximum height permitted within our standard residential zoning districts of 35 feet. So this would match or be a little bit less intrusive visually for the residential neighborhood that it abuts. And then this will be the proposed elevations for the 4-story dwelling. The structure is located approximately 500 feet from the existing residential neighborhood and is located on the eastern side of the property, again, adjacent to US Highway 99 or US Grand Parkway. The height of the 4-story dwelling unit is also limited to 70 feet max. And then this will be the conceptual rendering for the proposed 4-story dwelling unit, with the proposed structure being composed of at least 70% primary building finish materials, which would be brick, stone, textured concrete panels, or glass. And then I'm just going to read the next slides off for y'all. These are going to be a summary of all of the proposed changes, so I do apologize if it is a little bit iterative by the time I get to slide 4 of these bad boys. So the meets and bounds description has been updated to reflect the additional acreage of Site B being incorporated into the FDP. The topography survey has also been updated to reflect the additional acreage of Site C that is proposed to be incorporated. Exhibit B has been updated to include the written development regulations for Site C. Exhibit C2 has been amended to include the proposed layout for Site C. Exhibit C3 has been amended to show the perspective renderings for the proposed Site C. Exhibit C4 has been amended to show the proposed pedestrian access and connectivity plan. C5 has been added to the FDP to show the enlarged construction plans for the new proposed Site C. Exhibit C6 has been added to the FDP to show the proposed landscaping plan for Site C. C7 has been added to the FDP to show the proposed building elevations for the 4-story independent senior living facility. C8 has been added to the FDP to show the proposed building elevations for the 1-story bungalows. C9 has been added to the FDP to illustrate the applicable bulk lane regulations for the proposed Site C. Exhibit D has been added to include the permitted uses for Site C and to include parks and recreation facilities as a permitted use for Site A. And then finally, Exhibit E has been updated to allow for more biodiversity and plant species within the FDP. And then public hearing notification requirements were met for this public hearing. So mailers were sent to property owners within 200 feet of the subject property. A notification was published in the Fort Bend Independent and on the city's webpage advertising the public hearing. Additionally, a courtesy sign was also placed on the property. At this time, there have been 7 inquiries that we have received regarding this, with 4 of those being in opposition, and then those have also been placed on the dais for y'all's consideration as well. But in the next slide, we're going to go over kind of those concerns and speak through those a little bit as well. Okay, and then this is going to be a synopsis of concerns from residents. So one of the concerns was a potential increased electrical grid strain. So essentially for this site, in order to receive a building permit for construction, the city must receive a letter of no objection or a LONO from CenterPoint stating that they have the capacity to support the development. So with that being said, the development would not have an adverse impact on the community as well. And then increased presence of EMS within the neighborhood. So there will be an increased presence of EMS in the area as a result of this development. However, this is not out of the ordinary for the existing neighborhood. Presently, the neighborhood already abuts a senior living facility and is less than 1 mile from the Memorial Hermann Sugarland campus and is also less than 2 miles from the Sugarland Fire Station number 6. So the noise generated from emergency response vehicles is not an uncommon occurrence for the existing neighborhood. And additionally, with the site's close proximity to both EMS and hospital services, it makes it an ideal location for a senior living facility. Ensuring the existing character of the neighborhood will be maintained. In order to maintain the existing character of the neighborhood, the development is proposing 1-story dwelling units along the western edge of the property, aligning with the height of the existing residential neighborhood, and is proposing the 4-story dwelling unit along the eastern property line that abuts US Highway 99 Grand Parkway. And then ground vibrations potentially affecting foundation of adjacent properties during construction. So while vibrations are expected during construction, we do not anticipate any impacts to existing structures due to the construction vibrations due to the distance of the construction from the existing structures. Increased traffic levels. So a TIA worksheet or traffic impact analysis worksheet was completed for the development. The results from the TIA were not high enough to warrant a full scope TIA, and also the TIA worksheet did not identify any adverse traffic impacts that would need to be mitigated. Lighting. So the city has lighting standards for non-single family premises and does not permit more than 2-foot candles on an adjacent residential property measured from 10 feet inside that property line. The proposed development would comply with these standards. And then finally, noise and debris generated during construction. So the city has nuisance regulations surrounding construction, limiting the hours of construction from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And additionally, it is unlawful for anybody to engage in construction work at a volume that is loud and long enough to unreasonably disturb the peace of others on the same or adjoining property. And additionally, the city also has regulations pertaining to keeping the site clean and tidy during construction. And then this is going to be the anticipated timeline for the item. So today, April 23rd, we are presenting the item before you all today for public hearing with consideration and action. And then we are hoping to present the first reading of the ordinance to City Council on May 19th, and then the second reading on June 2nd. And then at this time, staff supports a consideration action recommending approval of the Holy Cross Episcopal Church Final Development Plan, PE Ordinance 2098 to the mayor and members of City Council. And then we are also here to answer any questions y'all might have, myself, traffic, engineering, and then also the applicant.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the public hearing. We will receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on the proposed amendment to the Plan Development District Ordinance number 2098, Holy Cross Episcopal Church Final Development Plan, located in the northeast corner of West River Park Drive and Wimberley Canyon Drive. The 23.545 acre plan includes 3 sites: existing site A, Holy Cross Episcopal Church; existing site B, Village at Sugarland Assisted Senior Living Facility; and proposed site C being used for age-restricted senior living 55+, constructed of 1-story bungalows and a 4-story courtyard-style residences. Do we have anyone signed up to address the commission in public hearing?
No, Chair, we do not.
All right. Anyone not signed up care to address? All right, we've got one taker. Come on down, sir. If you'll give that to the secretary, please. Okay.
Very well.
And you have 3 minutes, sir. Good evening.
Thank you. My name is Darren Etlinger. I'm a resident of River Park. I know very little about this development. I am a part of the board. And these 2 gentlemen over here came to one of our board meetings and just presented it briefly. And since then, now that I know that this is occurring, I just wanted to express some concern about, I'm sorry. Oh, that is better. Water runoff, having the additional concrete on what little lands that we still have available that's prairie or just ground as opposed to a development. We have quite a bit of retention ponds and stuff like that in the community. And collectively, all of this works together. And if they create a new development, what will be the impact of that? He's mentioned, or they've talked about the traffic not being an issue. We do see quite a few ambulances, more than we did before the existing development that's there now. Routinely, we see ambulances as we exit and enter in the morning and then in the evening. I didn't come prepared to really talk about this, so I don't have a whole list of stuff, but I'm just concerned about what little land we have available in the area being consumed by stuff that personally isn't of great issue to me. I'm 53 almost, so maybe in 2 years it might be more important to me, but right now I would have thought that maybe we could do something else with this land. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and for taking time to attend the meeting. If you'll give your form to the secretary, that'd be great. Anyone else for public hearing before I formally close it? Last call. Okay, at this time I will close the public hearing and we will move on to consideration and action. Bear with me as I read the agenda item again. Yeah. Well, actually, let's do questions for staff. Do we have any clarifying questions for staff? And by the way, let me interrupt myself. For the record, I just want to let that, I think you said this in your presentation, Emily, but for the I would like the record to reflect that I believe you said there were 7 inquiries in total regarding the project. 2 inquiries were requests for additional information. There were 4 in opposition responses included on the quick reference sheet, and one resident had filed twice in opposition. And I just want to make it clear for the record that the public comments that staff received after the staff report have been made available to the commission. Now, with that, any clarifying questions for staff?
Oh, it goes this way. Oh.
Well, that's usually the rule.
Y'all made a mistake putting me here, let me go.
Commissioner Tilton.
All right.
What say you?
Thank you. Question, because I know exactly where this is. I live in New Territory, and I just want to make sure that this doesn't affect my ability to go to the donut shop right there in River Park. So,
Billy's Donuts.
Yeah, Billy's Donuts is great.
I can't say the direct route to the donut shop was analyzed, but it should not have any adverse traffic impacts. So it was not, the threshold was not high enough to warrant a full scope TIA, so there were no mitigation measures that were required.
And that's where my question comes, is that, you said that you did the worksheet TIA, and I know I didn't see it. I kind of looked it up and just kind of saw what could be considered for a full scope. But if you could explain sort of what the worksheet showed, to make y'all make that determination that you didn't need a full scope TIA.
Yes, sir. And then we do have a representative for our traffic division, Jason Vaughn, who will speak to that a little bit more so in depth.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, commissioners. As Emily mentioned, I'm Jason Vaughn, traffic engineering manager with engineering. And so to answer your question, Commissioner, the TIA worksheet, and that, let me flip around and take a look at it here. So basically, the answer on the worksheet, what it does is we take a look at the land use that's provided. In that, in this case, the independent senior living, we use the national standards. It's the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual. It's a standard used by multiple agencies for determining the forecasted trips for land use. In that, in this case here, we had, let's see. Yeah, we had it was 216 units in that, because it was based on the number of units within the land use, and it generated so with the TI worksheet, the city's guidelines are if you exceed 100 trips during a peak hour or 1,000 trips during a day, that's the trigger for doing a full TIA study. And what it showed is during the peak hour, AM was 48 trips, and PM was 64 trips with a daily total of 665, so it's below those thresholds. Basically, what Institute of Transportation Engineers, what ITE states is if you're, or per our guidelines, if you're below those thresholds, you're generating a low amount of trips. If you're above those thresholds, which we've several other developments that we've looked at, once it goes above those thresholds, we do require a TIA. So hopefully that answers your question.
Follow up. Thank you. Okay, so when you're talking about the amount of trips, is that the total site, the 26 total acres, or is that only the 5 acres and the proposed development right now? So I know, for example, we got the church, right, and then we got the current assisted living facility, and then we have this additional 4-story facility along with what I'm assuming is going to be 16 townhomes because there's 16 garages that y'all talked about. And so is that, are you looking at the entire development itself, or are you just looking at that specific Part C?
Well, the TI worksheet was based on Part C, but for the assisted living that was completed back in 2016, they also had to do a TI MMO TI worksheet. Their trips were below at that time too, so adding the numbers together, peak hours were still below 100 trips per peak hour.
Okay. Because, thank you. Because I guess my concern about that is that when you're looking at the ingress egress, right, it's only, it seems like it's the same ingress egress for all assisted living facilities through the private drive, and then over to the cross street, whatever, WA, and then onto River Park Drive. And so, which is also the only ingress egress, I believe, for that whole west side of River Park, outside of driving behind the hospital. And so that was my other question is, when you're talking about specifically River Park and Grand Parkway, did y'all consider that intersection as well as the rest of River Park Drive, West River Park, or did you just only consider the specific development itself?
Well, for the TI worksheet to see if it requires a full TIA, it's for just the site.
Okay.
And that if we were to go to a full TIA, then you would look at the adjacent intersections. But for the worksheet to see if it triggers a full TIA, it's for the site.
You good?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Smith, do you have questions?
Okay,
Sorry.
thanks. So what is this land that you're talking about incorporating into the PD? What's it currently zoned at?
So it is currently zoned. I actually have, oops, sorry, I'm going the wrong direction. I actually have a graphic that shows this, but it is currently zoned. Beautiful. So it's currently zoned as R1, which would be for residential, but this would be so the current dark green, that's the current bounds of the PD, and then the black hatching, that would be the proposed bounds of the FDP, were the ordinance to be approved. So it would go from residential and it would go to PD, or Planned Development District.
So it's already residential?
Correct, yes.
It just doesn't include senior living?
Correct, specifically, yes.
Specifically.
But it could be senior living, it's just like the dwelling unit in the residential.
So in moving it to this PD though, why create like all the other subcategories for that site rather just than making it all the same? Is really the 4-story driving that change?
No, so this R1 is for detached single family. So these structures, as the form currently sits, it would not be able to be permitted within the R1. But if we adopt these current regulations that are within the PD, then that would be permitted. But it is more of a form issue because the R1 district is for single family detached dwelling. And then none of what is proposed.
And that's what is in the green then?
Correct. So the PD is going to be like what is under the current ordinance 2098, and then the hatching is going to be what would be within it.
But is that also then a change that, I guess, 4 stories is still within the building code within R1?
So no, ma'am. So R1 only permits up to 35 feet or 2.5 stories. So the PD would allow for this to be taller for the 4-story structure. However, the 1-story bungalows would still be underneath that 35-foot threshold at 27 feet.
Okay. And then what about that other piece of property? I mean, it still stays sort of the same? I mean, there's potential for something else to happen there then?
There could be, but it is not currently owned by the development. They're not trying to currently incorporate that, but I do not know the future plans for that particular property.
So ultimately, this is being driven then by the developer that wants to develop the senior living space?
Correct, yes, by the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Got a couple of questions. You mentioned, and this is in light of the questions we heard from the public tonight. You mentioned the hours of allowable construction are 9 to 7, correct?
7 to 7.
7 to 7. What allowances need to be made? Because if this starts this summer, they're going to be pouring concrete at 2 in the morning. They're not pouring it in the heat of the day. What are you going to do, or what steps can the cities take to mitigate or to address that? Is it a special permit? How do they do that?
So you could receive a special permit. I don't know all of the parameters and what they would all look at as far as that goes, but if they are operating outside of that 7 to 7 window, that would become a code enforcement issue, and then that would be in their court.
Okay, well, I do construction. I'm going to tell you they're going to pour concrete at 2 in the morning. They're not going to pour that in the heat of the day, so a consideration for the neighborhood there. And then secondly, we heard a question on detention, and for the city engineer, my question is you're going to treat this, I'm going to guess, just like any other development, right? You're going to make sure you have capacity. There's capacity in the retention ponds that are out there, just as you would do any other development, right?
So that's correct. This site is inside of Levy District Number 10, which is a regional detention provider. When they submit their site plan application, we would require a letter of no objection from the Levy District saying that they have capacity or to provide that capacity on site. Okay,
So just to kind of explain that, you would make sure, just as you would any other development, that this one would be built to maintain the water runoff is required by the FEMA flood maps or whatever would govern here, correct?
That's correct.
Perfect, thank you. No other questions.
All right, let's go down to Randall. We'll work our way back up toward the center.
I just have a question about the egress. There's only one single point at Wimberley Canyon. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So that all of the traffic is going to go through Wimberley Canyon. There's no other egress through the church property?
So once you get into the property, there is an access easement for circulation, but there is only one point of entry, I believe, into the development.
I'm talking about for vehicles coming in and out. That would be the only way in and out. So
so
all
like
traffic
right
would
here?
have to go there.
Along here, you're referring to? I just want to make sure.
Because I see 2 entrances and exits for River Park for the church. But there's only the one for what I can see, just for the senior area only exits on Wimberley Canyon, correct?
So yes, so it would circulate through, and then there would be the internal connectivity, but yes, the one point of access.
Okay. And one other question, is there going to be reserve parking for the future homeowners, home renters, whatever it may be? Is there going to be designated parking areas, or is it going to all be open to everybody that lives there? Do you know that?
So we don't have designated spaces that would be like, say, like reserved for, say, like guests versus like future tenants or things like that. But we
Right.
have established the parking ratio to ensure that it would be adequately parked. So we've established that at this point, but not, the signage of what might be allocated for visitor versus future versus tenant.
Okay, the reason I ask that is I go to one of these every weekend, and the parking is atrocious at the one I go to, and I end up parking on the street. So I would like to know how many residents are going to have cars there, and how many parking spots are designated, and how many visitors, if there's a way to get those numbers, to make sure, because I don't see any place else to go. Like, I can park on the street now when I go visit my mother-in-law, and I don't see a way to do that here. And I see that as a large problem, especially on weekends when there's a lot of families going to meet their loved ones at these residences.
So if I get an answer to that. The parking ratio that will be used has to be approved when the site plan is approved. So if they're not meeting the parking ratio according to the number of beds or bungalows that they have, we wouldn't be able to approve that site plan.
Okay, I go to a senior living center just like this in the city of Sugar Land. And I'm going to tell you right now, I have problems parking there and have to park on the street. So the numbers that we're using may not be, to me, the best quality of numbers being used to develop parking for a area like this that has no additional overflow parking access areas. Like the one I visit, I can park on the street.
Would you mind sorry. Would you mind sharing which potential development that is that you visit on the weekends? Is it the Overture, perchance?
No, it's not the Overture. I'm not going to say which one it is,
Gotcha.
but
The only reason I had asked was because we had looked at some of the other parking ratios for the adjacent facilities within Sugar Land in order to come up with this parking ratio. But what I
Right.
can tell you, for example, like the Overture, their parking ratio is 1.3 per dwelling unit, but we did not feel like that was sufficient. So for this particular development, it has been beefed up to 1.5.
okay, well, it's not that one.
At that, and you don't have to share that. I was just trying to potentially offer, but not a problem at all.
Right, but there is a parking problem every weekend over there. And, well, it's not just on the weekends. I go there during the week too, and there's several people parking on the street because there's not enough parking at the seniors area, the designated parking. The reason I asked about designated parking, because the one I go and visit has designated parking for some of the residents there, so you can't park in those spots. And that would make a big difference on, you know, how you could park at this one. If there's no designated parking centers or spots, there may be plenty of parking because people are coming and going. But if there's designated ones, it be even more of a problem than the one I visit. So that's why somebody wants to speak.
I can just address general. Hi. Hello. I'm Trevor Meeks. I'm a architect on the project. And just in general, the parking ratio scenario of what we're talking about right now, on a macro scale, we look at parking ratio, and we do these projects all over the country. And like you mentioned, typically developers for senior living look for about 1.3 spaces per unit, which is, you know, if you think about it, there's about, in the 4-story building, I think there's 192 units, and we're talking about 55 plus and older people. So you're typically not having multiple cars per unit type of scenario. A multifamily apartment, normal market rate is typically around 1.5. We've pushed this one up to above 1.5 per unit. So just bid numbers, if it's 200 units, we're looking at 300 parking spaces. Now, of those 300 parking spaces, we're not assigning any of them to all of them to the units. It's suggesting that if you have 200 units and you're even full, chances are there's only going to be about 260 cars for the people that live there, which would leave 40 extra for anyone visiting, which is an abundance of visitor parking spots. So you use those ratios as a way to just kind of macro scale guesstimate it. But if you wanted to get specific and be like, we want 30 visitor spaces only for visitors, I mean, that's something we could work out with the developer.
All I can attest to is when I go visit my mother-in-law, there's not enough parking.
No, and I totally understand
and
that, but
that's-
it could be a 1.1 ratio or a 1.9 ratio.
I understand. I'm just want to make sure that you guys know that there are some places, senior living, that may have more vehicles than parking spots. And that's, when I go to visit her, it's a problem. So I just want to put that out. I don't know what the right answer is. I just want to ask the right question.
No, and absolutely. And if it's a concern to you, I can guarantee you it's a concern to the developer. So that's what they pay us for, to make sure they don't run into those problems.
Okay.
I feel confident about it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Randall. Commissioner DeWood?
Actually, I had the same question, so you took that.
Oh.
But I'm still I'm not convinced, because doesn't the city of Sugar Land or the PID have any parking ratios set aside for assisted living? A published ratio? Like, why are we coming up with these numbers?
So we do have an established ratio for assisted living. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but essentially what the PD process is you're kind of going through a negotiation process to have a higher standard of development. So that was kind of part of the process, was going back and forth to establish that parking ratio. So that's why it ended up.
Yeah, because I understand multifamily very well. When you say 1.5 per unit, are you talking about a single bed unit or a double bed unit or a 3-bed unit?
So it is per dwelling unit. So there's only 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom within the 4 stories. So there's no 3 bedroom or studios, but it is 1.5 per dwelling unit.
Because whether it's a senior living or an apartment, actually the ratio changes from a single unit to a double unit. So when it's a 2-bed unit, you would expect more parking, right?
So I do know, at least for multifamily, that parking ratio is 2 per dwelling. So sorry about that. Is 2 per I keep doing that, 2 per dwelling unit. But for this one, given it was an age-restricted community, that there's a little bit less activity for this site, kind of going back and forth through those parking studies, that's how we were able to come up with the 1.5.
So in presenting the site plan, are we approving the layout as well? Or we're just approving the use of the site?
So this is to establish the zoning on the property. So this is what this is for. So this is not the site plan stage yet.
So it is subject to change?
So yes, so there are some assurances within the PD that do establish that, but yes, there is some room for a little bit of kind of mitigation and interpretation. Yes, ma'am.
Is it subject to change to the number of units?
So the number of units is not within the development. For the bungalows, it's very clear just because there's the 16, it's the 16. But for the other one, that was just kind of like information that we had back and forth, but that has not been codified within the development, so that could potentially change. However, the parking ratio is within this FDP.
So the parking ratio going forward has been established at 1.5 per unit.
Correct.
But the number of units are subject to change.
Correct.
Okay.
So we've been given an idea from the developer as far as that goes, and that was what was used to inform the TIA. But there is, since it has not been codified, it's not been, 100 1 bedroom, 100 2 bedroom, it's not been put within this ordinance, there is slight room for flexibility.
Okay. Now, assisted living, there are still units. Does it affect the Sugarland gap? Remember, there's a gap in Sugarland on how many apartments you can do. Does assisted living not fall under that?
No, ma'am, it would not.
It would not fall under that. Yeah. Would 4-story building fall under that?
So no, ma'am. So that would be assisted living, not multifamily. So while it may look similar as far as the form is concerned, the use is not the same.
So it's not the same. So it's outside of that gap ratio.
Speaking of the percentage between single-family and multifamily units in the city, that ratio, the percentage of ratio between multifamily units and single-family units, age-restricted multifamily units are not considered in part of that ratio, that factor. And the land use is just establishing age-restricted. It's not allowing multifamily.
Yeah, but it's an independent living, so it's almost like
age-restricted, independent
it's
living.
still, okay, it's independent, but it's still an apartment complex, right?
It's not treated and looked at the same with the city of Sugar Land. As Emily stated, the form may look the same, but the use is not the same. If you think about it, it's age-restricted. In a regular apartment complex, you may have children that are living there. That wouldn't be the case with this complex. Or if it is, it would be very rare. And I don't know if their deed restrictions would say anything otherwise. There are some active communities that aren't necessarily in a multi-story building where children are not allowed to live there.
So it's independent living, 55 and over, right? And I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 handicap stalls, accessible stalls. Is there a requirement if you're doing 55 plus of independent living to have a larger ratio of accessible stalls?
We've never made that distinguishment before, and that is just a minimum. You could always add more parking stalls if you needed more handicap spaces. And I think just because maybe somebody is 55 over does not necessitate that they are handicapped.
No, it's not. That's not what I meant. It's just that when you're getting towards that 55 and plus could be anything. Could be 65, could be 75.
We have minimum standards for handicap. If they were, I'll just throw out a number, required to have 5, they could have 10, and we would still approve their site plan. We're just looking for 5, and in compliance with the code.
Does independent, okay, I'll ask you a different question. Does independent senior living, and this is for the architect, has to comply with DATS, Department of Aging and the Texas Department of Aging and Disability?
Yeah, I mean, it will comply with ADA and both fair housing, if that's what you're
But
asking.
does it have to comply with DADS?
TAS?
DADS, with state.
So I'm not sure about DAS. I know it complies with Texas TAS, Texas
I
Accessibility
understand
Standard.
Texas Accessibility Standards.
It's built per building code and per ANSI 117.1.3, which would be fair housing, and there will be fully accessible units throughout the project as well. Per code, probably 2% or whatnot, and the parking is the ADA accessible is per code, and like you said, just normal building code, you got to get a minimum. Now there's no max amount; you can always add more.
But you're saying that you don't have to comply with the state DADS, which is
my understanding. The state code is TAS, Texas Accessibility
There's
Standards.
a different code, but that's fine.
I'm not sure.
Is that
which
a
code you're
yes
talking
or
about.
no?
I'm not sure what code. What is the name of the code?
DADS,
What does that stand for?
Department of Aging and Disability.
Department.
This is not a licensed building? Okay.
Yeah, this is not a licensed. No, our code will be the IBC TAS fair housing.
So you're just under that right now. This is not assisted living. Okay.
Independent, not assisted.
Okay.
And just to give clarity on your parking question too, and just because I know it in my head is, and it might be subject to change, minorly, but right now I think we have about 109 one bedrooms and 83 two bedrooms in the 4-story, which works out to 275 beds, and we have about 300 parking spaces. So we actually provide about 1.1 parking space per bedroom. So we have more parking spaces than even bedrooms, let alone units. So that gives you an idea of a kind of a comfortable ratio. And then the bungalows, there's only actually 8, and each of them have a 2-car garage. So the bungalows park themselves easily. Thank you.
Anything further?
Not at this time, but I may have a
Well,
follow-up.
this is your time to ask questions because we're going to
Okay,
move
well-
on. Anything else?
That's it?
All right. Vice Chairman Hart? Okay.
Oh, thank you. So assuming this isn't the real site plan, I won't ask about elevations accuracy, and that's subject to change, I guess.
So as far as like the maximum height permitted?
Height, number of garages, there's more garages on the elevation than, things like that. I mean, I was just looking at that number, which is in their favor. There's more garages on the elevation than they
There
list, but
was 16, I believe, correct?
I counted 22.
That's
but
okay, sorry
yeah.
about that.
On the 4-story. Anyway,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But again, and I didn't see any dumpsters, so I'm guessing that these are things that
So
come.
that will be established at the site plan process, so
Yeah.
we're not into like the nitty gritty as far as like a refuse container, how it would be screened, anything like that yet. But that's where we're at as far as that was concerned. You had asked, I believe, another part to the question. I want to make sure I answer it.
Okay. Well, and I would just caution, we're adding a road on the north or kind of northwest side for the parking on the back side of the 4-story, but there's a horseshoe drive for the existing area, so we're connecting that. You might need some traffic signal signage or something there because you've got not an ideal 90-degree intersection there coming off a curve.
So that will all be internal parking. When we go through the site plan, our traffic engineering group will take a look at where signage will be so we can make sure that there's a safe flow.
Okay, yeah, I just, and since you have the site plan, I won't belabor that point. On the landscaping, this was 5.785 acres.
Yes.
The landscape has total proper area of 7.54 acres.
Where is that?
On C6, it says the total property area, 328,355 square feet, and that's 7.54 acres. So I don't know if that's just a typo, or is that different section, or
C6, correct?
C6, just the table. It says total property area. The 15% is correct, but it's based on 7.54. So I mean, we're getting more open space, but it's since it's codified, we want to make sure we have the right area.
Do you mind sharing where it's located within C6?
It's at the top of the table. See
So it's
where
in the
it's
table?
the
Okay.
table says PD landscape regulations, and then the next row says total property area 328,355, which is 7.54 acres. Okay, just because it ends up getting codified, you just want to make sure that.
We'll make that adjustment.
Okay. And then on Exhibit D, I guess I have a question now. Since Site B is built out, is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is existing.
So would this be a good time to remove all of the uses that were not used for the build-out? Because I would think we would want, if they want to, change the use later, we want them to come back in front of P&Z and have another public comment period before they go from an assisted living over 55 to all of a sudden they have a concierge medical care and, something else in here, laboratories or anything else that would change the parking, traffic, anything like that.
So the uses that were existing for Site B that were in the previous ordinance are the same and were not touched for this proposed ordinance, so they were left as is. But if they wanted to make any changes to that or go back through, they'd have to go through the public hearing process to add or remove those changes. But since it aligned with the previous ordinance as far as what was approved, we didn't feel like they needed to go in and amend those.
Right, so but that's what I'm asking, is now the time to amend that, because otherwise they could tear down a building and make it a concierge medical care building instead, because it's codified in the PD previously.
I would not say so. That was something, that was reviewed by P&C and that was previously approved by council. So that was something that was codified and that was, an acceptable use at that time. If that's, something that's maybe unacceptable, that could be something that staff could go back and visit. But since that was already something that was approved and codified, we left it as is since there were no changes that were made to the uses list for Site B.
Okay. But then I'll go to the Site C uses and ask why do we need to have community home,
So that is required.
long-term acute care, and facility rehabilitation hospital in there.
So community home, that's for those with disabilities. So that's something that has to be included within every zoning district. So we have that within, all of our residential zoning districts as well. That is required by the state. You had the other use, which was the rehabilitation.
Long-term acute care facility rehabilitation hospital.
Yes, sir. So for that one, they wanted to have the ability, in case there was someone that had something happen to them or they needed a little bit of extra TLC medical attention-wise, that they would be able to provide those services to that individual within that facility. But this is not intended to be something where, this is a long-term care facility. This is intended to be independent 55 plus. So if those cases do arise, they would have the ability to tend to those individuals, but that is not the primary use or what they're trying to go for.
Okay, but so they would reclassify the existing structure, or?
So that's just, so for Site C, that's just an option as far as the uses that they are proposing for that. So at this point, they're proposing independent 55 plus, but they would have that option to do that as well.
So it's possible that when we get the next site plan, it could have this long-term acute care facility rehabilitation hospital on it instead of?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But at this point in time, we have the independent 55 plus senior living. That is what's on the majority of the exhibits and such like that. So to my knowledge, that is what they are proceeding with, so.
Okay, thank you. And also, on this one, there's no note 7, even though it's on community home and assisted living.
And you're on exhibit D, the permitted uses, correct? And we can have that removed as well.
That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
We can have, sorry, I did not speak into the microphone. We can have those 7s omitted and removed from the document as well, since there's nothing that it's referencing to note-wise.
Oh, you're going to either remove note 7 or you're going to add note 7?
There is no note 7. Oh, sorry.
Right.
I keep doing that. There is no note 7, so since there's nothing that these are referencing to, we will have these removed. So we
Oh,
had
well,
got-
there is something referenced to note 7 on my copy. Hang on. The community home and the assisted living have 7.
Yes, sir, right here. But what I was saying is that in the notes section, there is no note.
That's
or
right.
note
That's what I'm
7.
saying. There's no note 7.
Yes, sir. So I was saying these right here will be removed.
Oh, okay.
Since there's nothing that it's referencing
Thank
to,
you.
then those would be omitted. Sorry if that was not articulated well on my end. I apologize.
Thank you.
All right, a couple clarifying question, Commissioner Tillman?
Yeah, Commissioner Hart actually took a lot of my questions away, which is great. So I don't have to talk as much, which is sad, but it's okay. With regard to the long-term, for the site uses, long-term acute care facility rehabilitation hospital, it kind of concerns me a little bit because that's a big difference between the use of the site than a independent living facility. And a lot of the concerns from the residents that were discussed with regard to the number of EMS and the traffic and things like that, I think would be a huge difference if they did decide to put in that hospital. And I know too, because just like everybody else, we have experiences, and I've had an experience where I had to put my grandmother through that. And so that concerns me. And then it also concerns me with regard to, because it seems to me when I'm looking at these footnotes, what they're talking about is the number of units, number of beds, the parking ratios, because you talk about that 1.5 parking ratio. Under the uses of Site C, the footnote 5 and footnote 6 specifically discuss that. And so it does concern me that community home and assisted living have the footnotes, but they're not included. I'm assuming it was going to be some sort of parking ratio or number of beds. And then with regard to the long-term acute care facility rehabilitation hospital, if that stays in, I do know on Site B it shows a footnote that discusses a limitation of the number of beds to 115, and then the amount of square footage that they could do that in. So it got limited to 500 square feet, which probably aligns with kind of what was discussed with regard to, we just need a spot to be able to help people in the event they get hurt. But I am concerned that there is no limitations with regard to the permitted use on Site C for a long-term acute care hospital.
Would potentially a square footage cap make you feel a little bit more comfortable with that use?
Yeah, it would.
Okay.
Anything further?
That's it.
Commissioner Dewood, did you have any clarifying questions? No. I have a question. Did this proposal get presented to commission in review and discussion? Did I miss that?
You mean like a workshop? No, sir.
Okay. I can't help but wonder if that would have been helpful. All right, anything further for staff? All right, we're in consideration and action. Anyone, do we have a motion? All right, I don't have a motion. Do I have to move to, do we need to?
If I may, hello everyone. So if there's additional information that is needed, you can always table your consideration and action.
I was about to do that.
Request any additional information that staff can work with the applicant to provide, and we can come back and re-present that for your future consideration and action.
Thank you. I was about to suggest that on the, but I wanted to make sure I at least had the advice of counsel, and now I have more than that in staff. So I'll make a motion to table this particular agenda item pending further discussions between the applicant and city staff. Is there a second? I've got a second from Commissioner Tilton, and this one's not in the system.
If I could ask for specific things that y'all would want us to work with the applicant on.
You can ask us for that, sure.
Please let us know
We will.
we can be efficient. Yep, thank you.
We will do that. This is not the system, so we'll do a hand vote on the motion to table. Everyone cool with that?
Do you want to include those in the motion to table?
Include what?
The direction to staff?
No, I think the request was just for the commissioners to provide staff with feedback so that staff can utilize it in its discussions with the developers, not from the dais.
Oh, we would love to hear that now. Yes.
Well, you've heard a bunch.
Okay.
So let me.
Maybe a summary then.
Let me hold on.
To make sure.
All right. So I've got a motion. I've got a second. We'll see if there's further discussion. Commissioners, you have been invited to provide more specific direction to city staff. Much has been provided during the course of these discussions. I'm sure staff was attentive and took notes of what was already stated. In addition to those items, would anyone recommend staff consider anything additional with respect to this proposed PD?
I can go just from some of what I heard. So it sounds to me that there is more information needed based upon the bed ratio to parking. And there's more information, and then I think that we would like the uses reviewed to indicate, should all of those uses be in there for Site 3, and the intention of something changing and being knocked down. And one that I have is that, I know this is driving this, but does it have to be 4 stories? I mean, is this an economic kind of decision where they feel like if they develop this area, it has to be 4 stories, or is there an option if it goes 3 stories? Because I hear from the public that they're worried about this 4-story building out in front of their neighborhood. So those are the ones I heard.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything further? Direction for staff?
Yes, expanding on that with the additional uses, how that would impact the parking and the TIA, since they don't know. Is there an alternative analysis that could be presented saying that we're still within it? I know that we don't have the site plan, but I think that's part of the issue is that uncertainty of what's going there. How would that impact the traffic and the parking, and would a hospital have more EMS issues that were expressed as a concern from the public?
Commissioner Brown, do you have something? Good.
The one that Chuck did, or Commissioner Brown didn't bring up, which we probably need to understand, is that, he indicates that we're going to be pouring concrete 2 a.m. in the morning, and there's these limitations on sound. So we've got to figure out how that's going to be mitigated or how that will be worked if the construction goes forward.
Okay.
And then for continuation.
Randall, go ahead.
Continuation on the parking, I think the big thing that's being left out is the number of staff that works at this place and parking. You're talking about 1.5 per parking per building or per resident, but how many people work on site? Because the assisted living or the place I go to has a lot of staff, and when I walk down the hallways, there's probably a half a dozen people cleaning the residents' rooms. So that's a half a dozen per floor, additional parking spots that are needed. There's staff that's needed in where you prepare the food, where the maintenance guys park, where their maintenance areas are going to be at, how many vehicles they have. Does this facility have their own transportation? How many parking spots are going to be taken up by buses that are going to be on site to take their residents to Walmart or Kroger or wherever they need to go? Those need to be added in on top of the parking spots for the general parking of the people and their guests. So a little bit more parking problem.
Anything else? I'll add to that
Yeah.
for my money. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Just one consideration, that if you could discuss with the developer what is the max number of units that makes economical sense for them to do this. Because I think that would drive the question, can this be a 3-story project? If it doesn't work for them economically from the perspective of number of units, then, you know. So I think maybe that once you've had that discussion, maybe that can be written in, not to exceed 200 or 150 or whatever it is. Because then it can be teared down or it can be repurposed into an apartment complex. It is the same as an apartment complex.
And then for me, I would add to that, I think it would be great to see this item in a workshop before it comes back to us for consideration and action. And I think a presentation by or on behalf of the developer would be very helpful.
So kind of 2 presentations in tandem?
Pardon? Well, by or on behalf. I'm not saying a specific person has to do it, but
Just wanting to make sure we're giving you what you're wanting, so one with staff and then one with the applicant?
yes, for sure. Oh, we would hear from the applicant and staff, yes. I think that'd be helpful.
So how does this impact the timeline? So I know in the beginning of your presentation, you gave the timeline of going to city council. So does that now shift that, or you're still going to go to council?
So no, ma'am. So with that being said, we are not going to advertise for the public hearing on the
We're not
19th. We are
advancing
going
it.
to go back. We are going to look at the
Presumably.
additional items recommended, workshop, then go back for a public hearing consideration and action, and then hopefully at that point, then move to council. Okay.
All right, any further discussion? All right, we've got a motion and a second on a motion to table. Please vote by hand. All in favor? That's unanimous. That passes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Emily. Congratulations again on your promotion, and we look forward to the further interaction between city staff and the applicant and further presentation of this item. At this time, we will move on to item 7A, workshop, subdivision variance process, review and discussion of the subdivision variance processes outlined in Chapter 5 subdivision regulations. Hello, Jessica. How are you?
I am good. Good
The floor is
evening.
yours.
It's good to talk with you all again. Subdivision variance process. This is not something that you all that have maybe has served as longtime commissioners have ever even dealt with, and it's not a territory that staff finds themselves in either. But with that being said, we just wanted to provide you an overview and that process. So the purpose of a subdivision variance is to grant relief from undue hardship that is in Chapter 5, which are the subdivision regulations. It's aimed at protecting public interests while also allowing reasonable use of the property, and decisions are guided by the health, safety, and welfare of the community. The roles. The role you will see is very similar to the process that we just went through with any sort of zoning, where you are a recommending body to the council. And with that, you can make recommendations to approve with conditions, or deny. And then council can do the same with that. Recommendations can be indefinite, which means they always run with the land. They don't run with a property owner, or it can be for specified periods of time. It allows some flexibility that recommendation could occur. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would require a time limit, but you do have that option. And as always, the applicant must prove a hardship with these cases. What exactly is undue hardship? Hardship is when any strict compliance with the code wouldn't allow someone to develop on their property. Economic hardship is not a factor. So if someone doesn't want to come into compliance because they can't afford it, that's not a factor. And then council will evaluate that hardship against the purpose and intent of the code to develop orderly. Conditions have to be present, and the conditions before you are what are considered, and all of the conditions must be present for undue hardship. Those are special circumstances that would affect the land from strict application. So sometimes you may see special circumstances. It may be, you don't have a developable envelope, maybe due to an easement, or you could have a very unusual shaped piece of property that prevent you from doing that. Things that we looked at, we mentioned before, it's just public health, safety, welfare, and that it's not injurious to the public. It will not impede orderly subdivision of other lands in the area, and that a more appropriate design solution doesn't currently exist in the subdivision regulations. There's hardship tests for council and then for you also as the recommending body, that the strict compliance doesn't leave a reasonable use of the property. It's not created because of personal circumstances. Again, kind of going back to if I can't afford to do something or I don't want to spend the money to do it, that's not a reason why. You can't self-impose the hardship on you, on the property. It's unique to the property, and council cannot authorize a variance that violates any other portion of an ordinance or regulation. So that being the same with your recommendation as it would go to city council. Again, the duration, variances can be indefinite or specified. The commission makes those recommendations to council, and you can use same specified duration and time if you so choose. And council can impose any reasonable conditions that's compatible with the surrounding area. How do we keep track of all of this? If a variance were to be granted or a variance was granted with conditions, let's say, there would be a notation that would be noted on that final plat. We do custom notes how you would see it. With that being said, unless a variance is granted for approval or with conditions, the final plat is not considered complete until that happens. And then the way the process works is you would see a subdivision variance, that recommendation then goes to council. Then whatever comes out with the action with council, you would then see that final plat come to you for final action. So in the case of something being denied, they would have to come into compliance with the code and bring back for your approval, conditions, etc., or an approval for that would be in compliance before it was brought before you. There are also circumstances if you've got a general land plan. We don't see a lot of those lately anymore because we're mostly developed. But in the event that you had a general land plan that was associated with a variance, you could hear both of those at the same time, make that recommendation to council. Council would act on it, and then plat would come back for consideration and then action from you. Any conditions that could be placed on the subdivision variance are enforceable. They're enforceable according to the provisions in Chapter 5. How do we get to this point? A final plat is a final plat is submitted. And with that, they can also submit the application with a subdivision variance, or it could be done separately. Staff goes through the same checklist that we provide to you for every final plat that's brought for consideration. You're looking for the special circumstances, confirmation that orderly subdivision will remain intact in the area, documentation as to why something in the subdivision regulations don't allow for what they're wanting to do on the property, and then the applicant will provide a summarized evidence of what they think is the hardship due to the unique circumstances and not self-imposed. Staff would provide you also with factual information in order to help you make a decision on recommendation. And with that said, that is the overview of the process. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer that for you.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Smith.
So for clarity, because I know this sort of came up when we had to do a variance, the variance that we see is when we're actually changing a PD or something in the zoning. Because there are exceptions that are also brought to another board, like, and it does, go against the zoning, because it's usually something in their lot line that they're trying to, go 2 feet over or something of that nature. Because that wouldn't come to the P&Z, correct?
You are correct. Yes, ma'am. We have a whole board called the Zoning Board of Adjustment that would deal with these zoning matters. You are part of the variance process with anything under Chapter 5 that's under subdivision regulations. So it's different. Things you may not be used to, but there are that we have like in the subdivision regs. But we've got we talk about block lengths for streets. In the ETJ, we talk about certain lot widths. We talk about having like lots having access to a road. We talk about non-residential properties having access to public access easements. So that's the realm that if someone was going to ask for a subdivision variance, that you would see it. Zoning Board of Adjustment may see something that says, I've got a 25-foot setback, front setback on such and such zoning, but design, I need 20. That's more or less what they would hear. Now, you can't vary a use when we talk about Zoning Board of Adjustment. So that's where a zoning process comes in of, let's ask for a different zoning district and come before this board for a recommendation.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
What's driving this? This city hasn't had this forever, and now we've got it in front of us. Why?
You probably will see an application brought before you for your consideration and recommendation.
So
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go please.
I hope that comes to us in a workshop or review and discussion before it comes to us for consideration and action.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's, I don't want to use the word sneaky, but I will use the word sneaky. That's why I asked the question. My second question is part of that is, what precedent are we setting here? If you allow a variance to occur, the next person that wants something very similar is going to want the same thing given to them at their site or their property. And then how do you track all of that?
Agreed. So yes, precedent can be set with that if it's granted or granted with conditions. They're on case-by-case basis, so you can look for
So why not
hardship.
change the zoning law rather than trying to change, because if you're going to change it, you're going to set precedent, you might as well enact it and put it in the zoning for that area, right?
I agree.
Something to consider.
Well, I'm trying to answer this, I guess, as respectfully as possible, not to you all.
I said sneaky, you can say what you want.
No, but essentially, just as with a zoning variance, property owners and applicants have the ability and due process to ask for things that might not necessarily be supported by staff. So we must give them that due process.
If I may. And to that point, and that's it's obviously a good point, but that would come to us, but it's always going to come to us with a staff recommendation, correct?
If you would like a staff recommendation, we can provide you one. It doesn't say anything specifically in our code. And by practice with Zoning Board of Adjustment, we don't provide a recommendation. We provide the criteria and factual information for them to deliberate over.
Okay.
And the difference is that they have some mitigating circumstance, supposedly, right? I mean, that was what, I was on ZBA too for years, and you had to have something really extraordinary because you didn't want to set precedent on ZBA, because that was just a domino effect.
The applicant is provided to give you that information.
And that's why that there's the law is different than that, so, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask this, even though I don't want to. So, does a variance, would we be asked to consider and act on a variance separately from approving a plat?
Yes, sir. So you would see a variance before you would have the plat come to you for consideration.
Okay, so I'm going to read in from that. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm looking at legal again, like for the third time tonight. But because we would be acting on a request for variance, acting on that issue does not require us to do the same thing we would do if we were acting on the plat, meaning we have limited options under the state statute, we would approve the variance, deny it, or whatever, because it's not a plat, right? It is something that is going to be incorporated into the plat. Any guidance on that?
But to be clear, it's going to be a recommendation to council.
Understood.
Right. So it's a separate process.
Okay, so because I I get it, because I understand, because it's a recommendation, we're not actually with a plat, we're the final. And so we have that up statute place. Makes sense. Perfect. All right. I'm gotta ask Leo. Stopped a dumb question for me later. Okay, anything else for staff? All right.
I would just like to reiterate, I like your comment that if anything comes forward, it needs to be workshopped. So,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Jessica. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone who contributed. Item 8A, we will not have a liaison report because Commissioner Parikh is not with us. 8B, city staff report.
Actually, I had the March 24th.
Oh, I'm sorry. It doesn't
that's
say that
fine.
here, but I'm glad you have it. Please.
No, it was in Approva's court, but we exchanged.
Okay. Well, then, what is your report?
So March 24th, it was actually, it seemed like a workshop for this council where they discussed how to, they were discussing when the boards and commissions term should begin and end, and how to go into every year or every other year, whatever, to source talent, and to have a meet and greet, and then to follow up with, question and answer for council recommendations, and then maybe the oath, and then when the actual term would begin. And I think this, they wanted to have the council think about standardizing it across all boards and commissions to a 2-year term every time it's renewed, and then how many times can it be renewed. So that was a workshop for council to think on, I think, in a nutshell. Thank you.
Who was asking to standardize it? Staff, or was that?
Staff was asking to standardize boards and commission.
Thank you for that report. Obviously very pertinent to this and other boards and commissions in the city of Sugar Land. Anything further on liaison reports? 8B, city staff report. Did you cast lots?
Just getting a quick update so that I could speak somewhat intelligently. So your next meeting will be May 14th, and we will have items. So we can't wait to see you then. Thank
I will
you.
be gone for planning purposes.
Okay. Noted. Appreciate the
Okay,
heads
any
up.
other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Got a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Brown. I will second that. That motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.